Hello, this is Sandra Valentin speaking, and I'm here to tell you about my paper, A Perfect Learning Day, Perceptions of Secondary School Students About the Ideal School. This work emerged from the perception and from my experience as a teacher about the difficulty that teachers have to motivate today's students. These students have scattered interests and are very motivated for the use of technology, though they use it more in a playful way, scattering easily since they have different interests and rhythms. These were the starting points for some concerns. Teacher training that in the 90s had already been pointed out in literature as a factor to be rethought. More recently, emerged a concern with training that should consider ICT as an integral instrument of the classroom. Associated to these aspects is referred the importance of redesigning the spaces in which students learn. Together with the need of rethinking spaces and ways of doing, the contact with future classrooms and the influence of design thinking allowed me to participate in the DELLI research project of Universidade Lusófona. From this context came up my investigation question: how students in secondary school would like to see a day of classes in the future. This question have other questions related, which made me to try to fulfill two objectives: identify the students' perceptions regarding the ideal school to generate learning in the future, and define improvement suggestions that may enhance teaching practices and learning. Reinforcing the highlighted problem in the investigation question, it was found in literature data that addressed some worries regarding the concern about school failure and the culture of retention that still prevails in Portuguese schools, together with the need to reconsider how students acquire knowledge and skills and the need to adapt the methodologies to a society in constant evolution. Through the contact with design thinking in my personal and professional experience, I face the work of a teacher as the one of a designer that has to question itself constantly, trying to see a bit further, to draw strategies to apply to their students in a way that these are turn out to be adequate and effective. Considering that design thinking is a process that any individual can develop, accessing their creative abilities to solve a problem, considering the needs of a certain group, it was thought as a potential booster of changes in education, allowing to do what Gerver pointed out as fundamental to motivate students, to understand how do we turn schools into Disneyland, meaning to understand how to transform school in a nice place where students can feel good and learn at the same time. The project DELLI originated this work. It is an investigation project that has started in 2018 and it's still being developed, that has as focus to understand how future classrooms are being used in some schools in Portugal, with the purpose of motivating the use of innovative learning environments, generating commitment and motivation to design a new school grammar, and producing a model for changing practices. All the stakeholders involved in the educational process are the target of this project, as it is fundamental to consider all stakeholders involved in the problem that is intended to solve, creating a collaborative spirit of co-creation so that everyone feels part of the process of change. And this project was the starting point for the development of the report project for the Master in Pedagogical Use of ICT. This participation was the starting point because it was made a participatory assessment of perceptions of secondary school students regarding a perfect learning day. This diagnosis was based in a descriptive study framed in a qualitative paradigm anchored in the assumptions of design thinking, specifically in the model of ideas revolution developed by Mateus in 2016. The diagnosis was made to regular and professional secondary school students from two schools in different areas of the country, Alcanena and Aveiro, in a total of 53 students. The data were collected using an unconventional data collection tool to encourage responses in a freely and relaxed way, and the data processing was made via content analysis of the answers obtained. From the analysis of the data collected, we obtain results that show how students think an ideal day of school should be, which, based in literature, we followed with suggestions for improvement that intend to contribute for an evolution in schools and teachers acting. In first place, students consider that in an ideal school day, the school organization model must be flexible and motivating. Therefore, it is suggested to loosen schedules, having into account, as an example of good practices, what is done already in some Portuguese schools under the project of curricular autonomy and flexibility. Other idea has to do with the places where students learn, considering students that in an ideal school day, learning must be possible in non-suffocating spaces with no walls limiting learning. In this way, we suggest to deconstruct the conventionality of the classrooms. This is really important, innovating learning spaces and promoting outdoor learning. Other point focused has to do with curricula that in an ideal school must allow broader versatility of subjects, practical contents, and significant learning. It is suggested to review and adapt curricula, create meaningful content, including practical contents that, for example, like finances, taxes, things that allow students to work as adults in the future. Encourage collaboration among students and make learning accessible to all regarding their differences. Evaluation was another thing students focused as important, and in an ideal school day, evaluation must be continuous, practical, and with less theoretical tests. So it is suggested that schools motivate the implementation of projects, make the evaluation continuous and with different weights, and do not focus the knowledge check on tests, since students, and as we can see by their quotes, consider that school evaluates their capacity to memorize and not their intelligence, and written tests do not prove what a student really is. Finally, students point out that in an ideal day of school, they must have closer teachers, more communication in the classroom, more active and motivating strategies, and most frequent use of ICT. So that it is suggested as really important to rethink the teacher's role, including in the teacher's training subjects that encourage effective use of ICT, promotion of active educational strategies, and stimulating collaborative work amongst teachers that must share good practices and bad practices also in order to improve teaching. Succinctly, how do high school students like to see a day of classes in the future? Well, they would like to see it with flexible schedules and curricula, with open learning spaces that allow them to move and to feel good, with practical and meaningful learning, with training, for example, in companies outside the school, with continuous and practical evaluation, and really importantly, with closer, innovative, and facilitator teachers. Curiously or not, all these meets what was determined in 2017 in the document that defines the student's profile at the end of the compulsory school, that says that in order for young people to achieve what is intended of them at the end of their compulsory academic course, it will be fundamental that school and all those involved in it commit in the search for changes and improvements. Thank you for your attention.